The full moon bathed the clearing in silver, casting eerie shadows between the towering pines of Elderglen. The night air was crisp, charged with magic and expectation. The entire Black Hollow pack stood in a wide circle, their gazes fixed on the center, where the moonlight trial was about to begin. Whispered prayers and anxious breaths hung in the air, thick as fog. Evelyn stood barefoot in the middle, her white ceremonial robe fluttering around her ankles. Her long dark hair clung to her back, damp from the river cleanse she'd completed moments earlier. Her hands trembled slightly, but her golden amber eyes stared ahead with quiet defiance. Tonight, the moon goddess would reveal her fated mate. Her heart pounded in her chest like a war drum. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't noble-born. Orphaned at 10 and raised by the healer's hut, Evelyn had grown up on the edge of the pack, tolerated but never embraced. The idea of being chosen, of having a place, of being loved, had once felt like a dream. But tonight, destiny would speak. The elders stepped forward, 5 cloaked figures with silver amulets glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Evelyn of No House," one elder announced, voice echoing across the silent woods, "step forth." She did. A low growl rippled through the pack as Roran, son of the Beta, emerged from the circle. Tall, broad and golden-haired, he was everything a future leader should be, and he knew it. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The moon pulsed. A bond snapped into place. The pack gasped. She saw it in Roran's eyes. The same jolt, the same recognition. His lips parted, his wolf rising in his aura, one heartbeat away from surrendering to the pull. For one precious moment, Evelyn felt seen. And then his face twisted. "No," Roran said sharply, stepping back as if she burned. "This is a mistake." Whispers spread like wildfire. The elders looked at each other in confusion. "She is your mate," one elder warned. "I reject her," Roran barked. "Before the moon, before the pack, before all." Gasps turned to murmurs of disbelief. Evelyn felt as if the earth had tilted beneath her feet. "You can't," she whispered, voice cracking. "I won't be bound to a healer's stray," he sneered. "The moon has erred." The pack erupted in noise, shock, outrage, and cruel amusement. Evelyn's knees buckled, but she didn't fall. Not yet. Elder Myra raised her hand, silencing the crowd. "So it is declared. Roran, son of the Beta, has rejected the bond." Her voice carried finality. Evelyn stood frozen, disbelief clawing at her chest. "You are dismissed," said Elder Myra, softer now but no less firm. Evelyn turned slowly, her face blank. The laughter, the whispers, the looks, she felt them like arrows in her back. No one stopped her, no one offered a hand. She walked out of the circle, past the fire, past the pack, into the cold darkness of the forest. Behind her, the chants resumed, the ceremony moving on as if she'd never mattered, as if fate hadn't just carved open her heart and left it bleeding beneath the stars. The trees swallowed her whole, and somewhere deep in the woods where the moon couldn't reach, Evelyn finally ran. If you've already felt the sting of rejection with Evelyn, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the rise of her vengeance, or her power. The forest was colder than she remembered. Evelyn moved through the trees like a shadow, her bare feet silent against the mossy earth. Her robe, once white and ceremonial, was torn and stained with mud and pine needles. The moon had long passed its peak, but its light still filtered faintly through the branches above, casting ghostly patterns across her path. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't go back. The betrayal replayed in her mind over and over, Roran's voice sharp and final, the crowd's laughter. The elder's cold dismissal. Her chest ached, not just from heartbreak, but from something deeper, the severing of something sacred, a bond that had never been given the chance to grow. A branch snapped in the distance. Evelyn froze, breath held. Wolves hunted these woods, rogues, outcasts, creatures who had turned their backs on the packs or had been cast out like her. But Evelyn wasn't afraid. Not now. Rejection had a way of stripping fear from the soul. After a few tense seconds, silence returned. She pressed on. Hours passed. The chill began to bite at her skin. Her limbs trembled, more from exhaustion than fear. Then, through the trees, she spotted it, the outline of a small, half-collapsed cabin nestled at the edge of a ravine. She approached cautiously. The door creaked on rusted hinges as she pushed it open. Dust and decay clung to the air. A broken table, a fireplace filled with ash. It was abandoned, but it was shelter. Evelyn dropped to her knees near the hearth. Her fingers fumbled for dry twigs and moss. She'd learned from the old healer how to build a fire. After several tries, a flame flickered to life, casting warmth and light into the gloom. She wrapped herself in a tattered blanket she found in the corner, curled on the dirt floor, and stared into the fire. Her throat was tight. Her eyes burned. But she didn't cry. Not yet. The silence pressed in. "Why me?" she whispered to no one. "Why would the moon choose him for me? Just to be humiliated?" Her voice cracked, the sound small and broken in the hollow space. She remembered her mother's voice, soft and warm, long ago. "The moon doesn't make mistakes, Evelyn. Even pain has purpose." But what purpose could there be in being cast out like filth? She closed her eyes, trying to block the memory, but it came anyway. Her mother's final night, her scent fading, her body weak from the fever that no potion could cure. Evelyn had held her hand as she slipped away. Since then the pack had treated her like a burden, a charity case. And now, even fate had turned its back. Wind howled through the cracks in the wall. A storm was coming. The fire crackled. Evelyn pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and pressed her back to the cabin wall. Sleep came slowly, shallow, haunted by dreams of silver eyes and cruel laughter. Dawn broke grey and cold. Her stomach growled with hunger, but there was nothing to eat. Still she stood, bones aching, and stepped outside. The forest greeted her with silence. No one was coming for her. And yet, something in her stirred. Not rage, not sorrow, but a quiet resolve. She would survive. Not for the pack, not for Roran, but for herself. She followed a small trail deeper into the woods, her senses sharper now. She could smell the stream nearby, hear the rustling of deer in the underbrush. She would hunt. She would adapt. She would not disappear. Because sometimes when the world cast you out, the wild made you stronger. The days blurred into one another beneath the towering canopies of Elder Glen Forest. Evelyn learned quickly how to track deer, how to set traps, how to move without drawing the attention of rogues. Her nails were chipped, her palms rough, her muscles lean with use. She didn't recognize the girl who had once stood trembling in the moonlight circle. One afternoon, while foraging near the edge of the southern woods, Evelyn caught wind of something unusual. Voices, human, not pack. She crouched low behind a thicket of ferns. The voices grew clearer, male, gruff, armored. "Another village taken," one said. "The Alpha King doesn't tolerate rebellion," another replied. "He's clearing out every rogue den from here to the Iron Ravines." Evelyn froze. She had heard of the Alpha King only in hushed tales. Lucian Stormclaw, ruler of the Central Kingdom, an alpha of ancient blood and unchallenged power. Rumor said he'd united dozens of packs under one rule. Others claimed he could command the moon itself. "Why come this far east?" the first voice asked. "He's looking for somethings or someone." Their voices faded into the trees. Evelyn stayed hidden long after they were gone. That night, beside the fire in her cabin, she turned the words over and over in her mind. The Alpha King. A ruler she had never seen, now moving closer to the outer packs, to her world. She stared into the flames, remembering her mother's stories. The kingdom beyond the Black Hollow Mountains, a court where wolves walked as kings, and strength was measured not in cruelty, but in honor. Evelyn scoffed softly. Fairy tales. And yet, something about the name lingered. Lucienne. Her dreams that night were different. She stood in a vast stone hall, moonlight spilling through stained glass windows. Shadows moved between the columns. At the far end, a throne carved from obsidian. And there, a figure, tall, silent, watching her with eyes that glowed silver. She woke breathless. The image burned into her mind. The next day, Evelyn found signs of movement near the stream. Heavy boot prints, not wolf. She tracked them briefly, curiosity gnawing at her resolve. Near the old trading path, she spotted them again. Soldiers, not local. She approached quietly, keeping to the trees. There were 3 men, resting beside their horses. Their armor bore an unfamiliar crest, a silver wolf beneath a crescent moon. One man, older and limping, looked up suddenly. "Who's there?" he called. Evelyn vanished into the underbrush before he could move. Later, while cleaning a rabbit she had caught, she couldn't stop thinking about them. Outsiders, soldiers, real ones. She had been so far removed from the world beyond Black Hollow that she had forgotten what else existed. There were kingdoms, courts, other packs, ones that hadn't rejected her, hadn't cast her aside like dirt. Maybe somewhere out there, wolves didn't treat fate like something to be discarded. She remembered Roran's face, twisted in disgust. She remembered the sneers, the laughter, the way the pack had turned their backs. A wind stirred through the trees, cool and sharp, carrying the scent of rain and something else, old, powerful, and faintly electric. Evelyn looked up. The sky had darkened. Storm clouds rolled across the heavens like a warning. Whatever was coming, yes, it was getting closer. And though she didn't know why, the name whispered once more in her thoughts. Lucian. The wind carried more than just rain now. It was early morning when Evelyn heard the howls. Not the song of wild wolves, but sharp, disciplined signals. Calls she hadn't heard since her days near the pack. They were moving in formation, organized, armed hunters. She darted up from the streambed where she'd been washing her hands and crouched low in the brush. Her ears strained for more. Leaves rustled, metal clanked, and the scent of iron drifted on the breeze. Not just any soldiers, these were royal. They were combing the forest. She moved quickly, slipping deeper into the trees. She knew the terrain better than they ever could. She knew the ridges where the soil crumbled easily, the thorny brambles that would snag a cloak, the animal paths that looked like nothing at first glance, but could carry you miles unseen. Still, she wasn't fast enough. A soldier burst through the trees ahead, sword drawn. He was young, startled to find her there. "Wait!" he called, but Evelyn turned and ran. He chased. She ducked under low branches, her breath ragged, heart hammering. Her wolf surged beneath her skin, but she held it down. Transforming would leave her vulnerable. Too much noise, too much light. Another shout came from her right. More were closing in. She cut across a stream, hoping to mask her scent, but her foot slipped on a slick stone. She fell hard, twisting her ankle with a sharp jolt of pain. Her cry echoed through the woods. Before she could rise, heavy boots splashed through the water. She looked up, ready to fight, to claw, to run again if she had to. But the soldier stopped. He wasn't what she expected. Tall, scarred, with streaks of grey at his temples despite his youth. His eyes weren't cruel. In fact, they widened when they met hers. "You're not one of the rogues," he said, lowering his weapon. Evelyn stayed crouched, muscles tensed. "Leave me alone." "I'm not here to hurt you." He glanced behind him, then knelt, extending a hand. "You shouldn't be out here alone. It's not safe anymore." She stared at him, unsure. "And whose fault is that?" He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he sighed. "Orders come from above. The Alpha Kings cleansing the borders, purging corruption." Her heart skipped. The Alpha King again. The man noticed her hesitation. "You've heard of him?" "Everyone has," she muttered, still not taking his hand. He studied her for a moment, then spoke softly. "He's not what the stories say. He's not a butcher." Evelyn said nothing. Her ankle throbbed. The soldier reached into his cloak and pulled out a small wrapped bundle. He tossed it to her, dried meat and hard bread. "Take it," he said. "We're not your enemies. Not unless you give us reason to be." She took it slowly. Hunger won over pride. "Name's Gareth," he said as he stood. "I'll say I found no one out here. Just don't stay too close to the patrol lines. Next soldier might not be as decent." She didn't thank him, but she watched him go, his footsteps light for someone so broad. When he vanished, Evelyn limped to the base of an old oak and sat heavily. Her fingers tightened around the food. Not just because she was starving, but because that one moment had pierced through the numbness. He could have turned her in. He hadn't. Maybe not everyone who wore the crest of a king was a monster. She stared up at the sky through the tangled branches. The Alpha King was coming, and for the first time she wasn't sure if she should run or wait. The village of Hollowmere was no more than a scatter of wooden homes nestled beneath the spine of Elderglen. Smoke curled from chimneys, and the faint scent of pine and roasted meat drifted through the cool autumn air. Evelyn watched from a distance, her cloak pulled tightly around her. She hadn't been near civilization since the trial. The pain of it still lingered like a bruise, not just Roran's rejection, but the way no one had spoken up for her. No one had looked twice. But something was different now. The streets of Hollowmere were filled with strangers, men in polished armor, horses that stood taller and finer than anything bred in the eastern packs. Villagers bowed low when they passed. There was tension in the air, reverence mixed with fear. She stayed hidden behind a tree at the forest's edge, eyes scanning the square. Then she saw him. He didn't need a crown to be known. Lucien Stormclaw sat atop a dark stallion, dressed in black leathers and silver pauldrons shaped like crescent moons. His presence was stillness wrapped in power. His face was cut from stone, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, eyes the color of storm clouds at dusk. Evelyn couldn't breathe. Something ancient inside her stirred. Recognition, not from memory, but from something older, deeper. Her wolf went still. Lucien turned his head. She froze. Their eyes met across the distance. For a moment, the village disappeared. The trees, the guards, the crowd, all of it faded into silence. His gaze locked onto hers like he had felt her watching. Her heart stuttered, but she turned and ran. Branches whipped her face as she fled back into the forest, breath ragged, chest tight. She didn't know why she'd gone to the village in the first place. She'd told herself it was curiosity. To see the soldiers, to understand the threat. But that wasn't the truth. She'd needed to see him. And now that she had, she didn't know what to do with it. She collapsed beside the stream, chest heaving. It wasn't just the way he'd looked at her. It was what she'd felt. A pull. A jolt, like the air between them had cracked with some unspoken truth. Was that the bond? Was fate cruel enough to tie her heart to another Alpha? Not again, she whispered, gripping the earth beneath her fingers. Not again. That night, the forest felt too quiet. The owls didn't call. Even the wind had gone still. Evelyn stared into her fire, unsettled. Lucien's face wouldn't leave her mind. The steadiness in his eyes. The way the crowd had deferred to him. He hadn't looked cruel. He hadn't looked anything like Roran, but he was still an Alpha, still royalty, still a man raised to command. She curled tighter beneath her blanket, teeth clenched. She had barely survived the last time fate made a choice for her. She wouldn't let it happen again. Far away in the heart of Hollowmere, Lucien stood on the balcony of the inn, eyes fixed on the tree line. She was there, he said. His second-in-command, Captain Elias, glanced at him. You saw someone? A girl, Lucien replied quietly. Amber eyes. She ran when I looked at her. Elias hesitated. Could be one of the locals. The villagers said a rogue girl's been seen nearby. Keeps to herself. Lucien didn't respond. He could still feel the way the air had shifted, like lightning before a storm. She wasn't rogue, he murmured. She was something else. Evelyn woke to the sound of crackling firewood that wasn't her own. The scent of herbs and ash filled the air, thick and strange. Her eyes snapped open. She wasn't in the cabin. She was lying on a mat woven from reeds in a round shelter that smelled of sage and cedar. A shadow moved beside her. You've been dancing too close to fate, said a voice, low, roughened by age. Evelyn sat up quickly, her instincts flaring, but her limbs were heavy, her head aching. Across from her, an old woman crouched near a clay pot boiling over a hearth. Her long white braids shimmered in the firelight. Her skin was weathered, marked with ancient symbols inked in dark red. Who are you? Evelyn rasped. So they call me Mora, the woman said without looking at her. though I doubt names matter much to you anymore. Evelyn narrowed her eyes. How did I get here? You stumbled near my border 3 nights ago, fevered and bleeding, Mora said. The forest guided you here. It remembers the bloodline you carry. What bloodline? Evelyn's voice was sharp, defensive. Now Mora turned, her gaze steady. You think you're just a forgotten orphan, a stray-turned-healers project, but your blood sings louder than most. Evelyn shook her head, trying to stand. I'm no one. You were born under a triple moon, Mora said, marked by the deity of silver flame. Your mother hid you well, but not well enough. The moon never forgets her chosen. Evelyn's breath hitched. You knew my mother. I knew her power, Mora replied. She ran from it, just like you're trying to. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the bubbling of the pot. Evelyn sat back down, unable to deny the chill curling in her stomach. I saw him, she whispered. The Alpha King in Hollowmere. Mora nodded slowly. And did you feel it? Yes. The word barely left her lips. But I don't want it. The bond is not something you choose, Mora said. It chooses you. It reveals what's buried. Power, pain, truth. Evelyn looked into the fire, her voice hollow. He'll reject me, just like the last one. No, Mora said softly. He won't. Evelyn met her eyes. How can you know that? Because you are the last of the line of Seraphine, the moon's blessed, Mora said. And the Alpha King carries the mark of the blood oath. You were not meant for Roran, that was a test. Lucien, he is your true mate. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thick, the words lodged in Evelyn's throat. You don't understand, she whispered. I don't want a crown, I don't want fate, I just want peace. Mora leaned in. Then learn to take power so you may protect peace. Or others will use your silence to destroy it. Thunder rolled outside. A storm was coming. Mora stood and held out her hand. Come. There's something you must see. Evelyn followed her into the night. Behind Mora's hut, in a clearing lined with glowing stones, stood an ancient altar, cracked and overgrown with moss. The moon broke through the clouds, casting silver light over the runes carved deep into the stone. Mora took Evelyn's hand and pressed it to the center of the altar. A pulse surged through her palm. Visions flashed, wolves running through the snow, her mother standing beside a burning tree, a crown of moonlight and Lucien's eyes watching her like he had always known her. She stumbled back, gasping. The moon calls you by name, Mora said. You cannot run from it much longer. Evelyn's heart thundered in her chest. She looked up at the moon, its glow cold and sharp above the trees. Something deep inside her had awakened, something that would not sleep again. The summons arrived with no ceremony, just a sealed scroll carried by a hawk with feathers like obsidian. It circled once over the clearing near Mora's hut, before diving down, dropping the scroll at Evelyn's feet. She stared at it for a long time. The seal was unmistakable. A silver crescent burned into black wax. The mark of the Alpha King. Mora stood in the doorway behind her, arms crossed. It has begun. Evelyn didn't move. I'm not going, she said flatly. You already know you will, Mora replied. Evelyn clenched her jaw. He's calling every unmated she-wolf from the border packs. It's a political show. I won't be paraded. Mora stepped closer. This is not a game of suitors. This is the moon demanding alignment. Refuse the king's call and you risk war. I risk losing myself again, Evelyn snapped. I'm not who I used to be. I won't kneel for another man. Mora's expression softened, but her voice remained steady. Then don't kneel. Stand, and let them see who you truly are. Evelyn didn't sleep that night. She sat by the fire, scroll untouched, the wind whispering through the trees like voices from a world she hadn't yet chosen to return to. By dawn, her decision had already been made. She left the forest wearing a cloak of storm-grey wool, her hair braided down her back, and Mora's final words echoing in her mind. Go not to belong. Go to confront. The journey took her through villages still scarred by the border wars, some abandoned, others filled with whispers of Lucien's army. Her name was not spoken, but eyes lingered on her longer than they used to. The air shifted when she passed. Some part of her knew why. By the time she arrived at the ceremonial grounds outside the city of Viramont, dozens had already gathered. Women from every corner of the realm, some draped in silks, others armored like warriors, all waiting, all wondering why they had been called. Evelyn stepped through them without a word, their stares like pinpricks against her skin. They didn't recognize her, not yet, but some did. Roran. He stood near the northern edge of the grounds, flanked by members of Black Hollow. He turned when she passed, disbelief flickering across his face. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low and sharp. Evelyn didn't stop walking. "Still chasing alphas?" he called after her, louder now. She paused. Slowly she turned to face him. His smirk faltered as their eyes met. "I'm not chasing anyone," she said. "But maybe you should ask yourself why you're still watching." Murmurs rose around them. Roran's face flushed with anger, but he didn't speak again. Evelyn walked on. The royal guards led her to a marble platform encircled by moonstone pillars. At its center stood a carved basin filled with water that shimmered unnaturally in the sunlight. Each she-wolf was to approach it when summoned. The moon would respond, or not. Lucien hadn't arrived yet, but his presence was everywhere. Flags bearing the silver wolf flapped in the wind. His soldiers stood like statues, eyes forward, hands resting on hilts. Evelyn found her place at the edge of the platform and waited. The sun climbed higher. The murmurs grew. Some stared at her cloak, plain compared to the silks around her. Others whispered about her presence, her silence, her unshaken poise. No one knew her name, but they were already building stories around her. Then came the horns, deep, echoing, final. The crowd parted. The Alpha King had arrived, and this time Evelyn didn't run. Lucien stepped onto the platform without a sound, but the world seemed to hush around him. His cloak billowed with the breeze, dark as storm clouds, lined with silver embroidery that shimmered under the midday sun. His gaze scanned the crowd with quiet intensity, pausing only for a second when it landed on her. Evelyn held his stare. For a long, breathless moment, neither of them moved. Neither of them looked away. Then Lucien turned to address the assembly, his voice calm, commanding. "You were summoned not for games or vanity, but for truth. The moon speaks through the sacred basin. Those called will approach. The bond will answer." He stepped back. One by one, women were called forward. Some left the basin disappointed, the water remaining still. Others wept with joy as it shimmered in response, marking a possible bond. The king never moved from his place, never reacted until... Evelyn of Black Hollow. Silence rippled across the platform. Even those who didn't know her name felt the shift in the air. Roran stiffened. Evelyn stepped forward slowly, her cloak trailing behind her like shadow. She passed women in embroidered gowns, guards in polished armor, and the judgmental stares of her old pack. She reached the basin and placed her hand on its edge. The water began to glow. Softly at first, then with a sudden violent pulse that sent a ripple of light across the stone. Gasps echoed. Some stepped back. Lucien's jaw clenched. Evelyn didn't flinch. Her face was unreadable, eyes locked on the basin until the light faded. Then she turned away, not toward Lucien but back toward the crowd, and locked eyes with Roran. He was pale. "You don't deserve that glow," he hissed, stepping toward her. She didn't stop walking. "Look at you," he continued, louder now, bitterness rising in his throat. Still pretending to be something special, still desperate for attention. Lucien moved. One step. That's all it took. The crowd fell silent again. "Is there a reason you're speaking to her like that?" Lucien's voice was low but sharp. Roran straightened. "I speak as a witness to her past. She was rejected for a reason." "And yet the moon sees her," Lucien said. "She's not worthy," Roran spat. Lucien's eyes darkened. "You speak of worth, but you deny the will of the moon?" Roran faltered. You rejected her, didn't you?" Lucienne interrupted, taking another step forward. In front of your pack. In front of the goddess. Roran's face reddened, but he held his ground. It was my right. Lucienne's gaze hardened. And now you will stand silent, because your right has passed. Evelyn said nothing. She didn't need to. Lucienne turned to her. Do you wish to respond? She glanced at Roran, her expression cool. No. He already said everything the world needs to know about him. The tension broke with a collective intake of breath. Even the guards shifted. Lucienne looked at her for a moment longer, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Then he nodded once. You may return to your place. She did, but nothing felt the same. The moment between her and the king was undeniable. The basin had glowed brighter for her than for any other. The moon had spoken, and Roran, for the first time, looked like a man who realized he'd made the worst mistake of his life. The ceremony ended at dusk, but Evelyn didn't linger. She slipped away from the gathering before the feast began, ignoring the whispers, the stolen glances, the weight of eyes trying to figure her out. The glow from the basin still burned beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. She walked until the torches faded behind her, into the quiet edge of the forest, where the air was cool and untouched. She needed distance, from the clamor, from the stairs, from the storm building in her chest. But he followed her. Lucienne didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. She felt him before she heard him, the steady rhythm of his footsteps, the calm weight of his presence in the dark. She didn't turn. You shouldn't be here. I go where the moon pulls me, he said. She closed her eyes briefly, gripping the bark of a tree. Don't speak to me like that. I've heard enough poetic nonsense to last a lifetime. Lucienne stepped closer. Then speak plainly. Do you feel it, or not? Evelyn spun to face him. Of course I feel it. I felt it the moment our eyes met in Hollowmere. I felt it before I even knew your name. That's not the problem. His brow furrowed slightly. Then what is? She took a breath, her voice tight. The last time I trusted a bond, I was humiliated, rejected, left to rot in the forest like I was nothing. Lucienne's jaw tightened. That wasn't your fault. No, she said, shaking her head. But it taught me not to hand over my soul just because fate says I should. Lucienne looked at her, really looked, and for the first time she saw something in his expression. Not power, not control, but restraint. I don't want your soul, he said quietly. I want your truth. Silence settled between them, heavy as snowfall. Then just barely above a whisper she asked, Do you feel it too? Lucian stepped closer, slowly. The air between them thickened. His scent hit her like a wave, pine and storm, and something uniquely him. Her wolf stirred. I've never felt anything like it, he admitted. The moment I saw you, I knew the bond wasn't just fate, it was fire. Her heart raced, but she stepped back. Then keep your distance. I can't trust that fire yet. I don't even trust myself. Lucian didn't argue. He only nodded once, eyes never leaving hers. I won't force what isn't ready, but understand this. I won't ignore it either. She didn't answer. He turned to leave, but paused just before vanishing into the trees. When you're ready, he said over his shoulder, I'll be where the moon placed me, watching, waiting. And then he was gone. Evelyn exhaled shakily and leaned back against the tree, her knees weak. She could still smell him in the air, feel the electric echo of his presence on her skin. Everything in her screamed to follow, but she didn't move. Instead, she whispered to the darkness, What if I'm too broken for this? A breeze stirred the leaves above her, as if the forest itself responded. She stayed there until the stars blinked open overhead, alone, wrestling with a truth she hadn't wanted, but could no longer deny. The forest was alive with the rustle of nocturnal creatures and the low hum of distant drums. Evelyn had wandered far beyond the ceremonial grounds, needing silence, needing breath. She moved through the trees like a phantom, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion, her wolf restless beneath her skin. But the danger found her before clarity did. The scent hit her first, sharp, acrid, wrong, not wolves, not soldiers, rogues. She crouched low, instincts flaring. Then a growl split the silence, followed by the snap of a twig behind her. She turned, too late. A shadow lunged. She rolled aside just in time, teeth bared, claws shifting into her hands. The rogue snarled, wild eyes gleaming under the moonlight. He wasn't alone, two more closed in, circling. "This one smells like the king," one hissed. "She burns with the moon," said another. "Take her." "The queen's blood is power." Evelyn's blood went cold. They knew. She didn't wait. She shifted partially, enough to tear into the closest attacker. Her claws slashed across his chest, sending him reeling into a tree. But the other two were faster. One caught her by the arm, the other slammed her against the ground. She fought like fire, but they were savage, relentless. A scream built in her throat. Then the air changed. A growl deeper than the earth tore through the clearing. The rogues froze. From the trees, a shadow emerged, massive, furious, shifting mid-stride into a man cloaked in darkness. Lucien. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He struck like a storm, faster than thought, tearing through the first rogue with a fury Evelyn had never witnessed. The second tried to run. Lucien caught him mid-leap and crushed him into the dirt. The third fled. Lucien turned to Evelyn, blood on his arms, chest heaving. "Are you hurt?" She blinked up at him, chest burning. Her voice cracked. Lucien crossed the distance and knelt beside her. His hands, now steady, touched her face. Evelyn. The way he said her name unraveled something in her. "I was fine," she lied. "You were outnumbered." "I can take care of myself." "I know," he said, "but that doesn't mean I'll let you bleed alone." Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. He looked down at her scraped knuckles, the blood staining her cloak. Then, quietly, "They said queen's blood." She nodded. "They sensed it." "So did you," she whispered. Lucien's eyes darkened. From the first moment, she looked away. "I didn't ask for this." "I didn't either," he replied, "but I will never treat it like a mistake." Her breath caught. Lucien leaned closer, but didn't touch her again. "You are not broken. And I'm not Roran. I won't shame you. I won't leave you. I won't silence your fire just to soothe my own pride." Evelyn's throat tightened. She wanted to run. She wanted to stay. Instead, she whispered, "Why me?" Lucien answered without hesitation. "Because you're the only one the moon made for me, and because I've never seen anyone burn the way you do." A breeze swept through the trees, stirring the ashes of the fallen rogues. The clearing was quiet again, but nothing felt the same. Evelyn stood slowly. Her wounds ached, but her spine straightened. She looked at Lucien, really looked, and saw not a king but a man who would bleed beside her, not above her. She didn't speak, but she didn't walk away either. Evelyn didn't sleep that night. Not from fear, not any more, but from the echo of something far more unsettling. The bond. It pulsed beneath her skin like a drumbeat. Not just emotion, but energy. A current connecting her to Lucien that she could no longer deny. She'd felt it flare during the fight, when he'd stepped between her and death, when his voice had steadied her heart without even trying. She was no longer afraid of the bond. She was afraid of what it would require from her. By morning, she found herself walking without direction, feet drawn to the edge of the ceremonial grounds, where the sacred grove met the highlands. She thought she was alone, until the scent of burning sage reached her. Mora stood beneath the ancient stone arch that marked the beginning of the moon path. She didn't look surprised to see Evelyn. "It's time," Mora said simply. Evelyn didn't ask what she meant. She already knew. They walked together in silence along the winding path, surrounded by towering moon willows that shimmered with dew and silver bark. At the end of the trail stood a stone circle, ancient, older than the kingdom itself, where the moon goddess was said to reveal her will. Lucien was already there. He stood at the center of the circle, eyes lifted to the sky, a single silver mark glowing faintly across his collarbone. When he looked at Evelyn, there was no hunger, no command, only a quiet, waiting reverence. Mora stepped back. "The bond will be tested. If it is true, the moon will bless the mark." Evelyn's pulse thundered in her ears. She stepped into the circle, her skin tingling with power. The air thickened. The wind held its breath. Lucian extended his hand. She hesitated only a second, then placed her palm against his. The world shifted. A jolt surged between them. Fire and ice, shadow and light. Memories not just their own, but of wolves long before them. Visions flashed behind Evelyn's eyes. A woman crowned in starlight. A warrior king falling to his knees. A howl so ancient it split mountains. Then came the light. It burst around them, cascading like falling stars. The ground glowed. The moon above pulsed in time with their joined heartbeat. Evelyn gasped as warmth spread from her hand up her arm, wrapping around her shoulder like a ribbon of heat. She looked down. The mark was there, a silver crescent etched above her heart. Lucien's eyes burned with awe. His own mark had grown brighter, now mirrored by hers. "It's true," Mora whispered. "The moon has chosen." Evelyn's knees buckled slightly, overwhelmed. Lucien caught her, steadying her with both hands. "I didn't expect—" she began. "Neither did I," he said softly. "But I've never been more certain of anything." She stared at the mark. It didn't feel like a chain. It felt like fire, alive and fierce, but hers. "This doesn't mean I belong to you," she said, voice quiet but steady. Lucien nodded. "No, it means we belong to the moon. Together." Their bond wasn't like the stories. It wasn't softness and surrender. It was steel and storm, forged in rejection, sharpened in fire. She straightened and stepped back, still breathless, but no longer trembling. "We show them tonight," she said. Lucien's brows lifted. "The pack?" "Everyone. No more hiding. No more shame." The moon had spoken, and Evelyn was done running. The gathering was larger than any in recent memory. Wolves from every corner of the realm lined the ceremonial amphitheater, their cloaks rippling in the wind, faces turned to the moonstone altar that shimmered beneath the rising moon. Fires burned along the perimeter, casting golden light across the stone floor where Lucien stood, cloaked in midnight black. At his side stood Evelyn. She wore no crown, no jewels, no silks, only a simple fitted tunic, her hair braided in a warrior's knot, the crescent mark above her heart visible to all. Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's her. The girl from Black Hollow. The rejected one." Roran stood among the crowd, face unreadable, arms crossed. His beta father beside him looked pale. Lucien raised his hand. Silence fell like snow. "The moon has revealed her will," he said. "The mark burns where the bond is true. You all saw it, you all felt it." He turned slightly, meeting Evelyn's gaze before continuing. "But the bond alone is not enough. A Luna must be more than a mate. She must be strength, she must be flame, she must survive." Lucien stepped back. Evelyn stepped forward. She let the crowd see her, not just the mark, but her scars, her stillness, her fire. Her voice carried calm and unshaken. "I was rejected in front of this realm, cast aside, mocked, forgotten. But I did not vanish." Murmurs rippled again, some with shame, some with awe. I lived. I bled. I clawed my way through shadow. "Not because I needed revenge," she said, locking eyes with Roran, "but because I refused to be defined by someone else's fear." She turned, slowly scanning the crowd. "I didn't ask for this bond, but I accept it. Not because it gives me power, but because it reveals who I've always been." Lucien stepped beside her. He took her hand. And then, with deliberate purpose, he bared his shoulder and sank to one knee before her. The gasp that followed wasn't from tradition. It was from shock. An Alpha King never knelt. Evelyn blinked, stunned. Lucien looked up at her, voice low but unwavering. "I do not take you as mine. I stand beside you, bound by the moon, marked by choice. If you accept this bond, let the realm bear witness." The mark on his shoulder glowed. So did hers. A beam of moonlight broke through the clouds above and struck the altar. Evelyn stepped forward. She knelt beside him. The moment their marks touched, A pulse of light erupted from them both, silencing the world. Wolves fell to their knees in instinctive submission. Even Roran lowered his eyes. The bond was sealed. When the light faded, Lucien helped her to her feet. He did not kiss her. He did not raise her hand. He simply looked at her like she was the storm and the stillness all at once. Then the elders approached. Each bowed. "The Luna has risen," said the eldest. "The realm accepts her." But Evelyn turned to the crowd and raised her voice once more. "I don't need your acceptance," she said. "I only need your truth. Follow or step aside." And not a soul dared challenge her. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She stood tall, beside a king who didn't take her light, but mirrored it. And for the first time since her rejection, the girl they once dismissed stood not as a broken shadow, but as flame made flesh. The days that followed were marked by a shift in the realm, not from orders or battles, but from presence. Evelyn didn't rule from behind Lucien. She walked beside him, shoulder to shoulder, in council meetings and on forest patrols. Whispers turned to silence when she entered a room, not because she demanded it, but because her silence held weight. She never asked to be followed. But they followed anyway. One afternoon she stood before the remnants of the Black Hollow pack, her old pack, the very wolves who had once turned their backs. Roran stood among them, stiff, unreadable. His father, the Beta, bowed his head first. "We failed you," he said. Evelyn said nothing. The silence stretched until the Beta dared to meet her eyes. "We believed the moon had erred. We were wrong. And now," she asked quietly, "we'll follow your command." She turned her gaze to Roran. He didn't look away. I was arrogant. I saw weakness where there was strength, and I let fear choose for me. Evelyn studied him, remembering every moment of that trial, the humiliation, the pain, the way the earth had felt when she walked away alone. "You said I was a mistake," she said. Roran nodded once. "And now I live with that shame." The pack shifted, uncomfortable, but Evelyn's voice stayed calm. "You won't be punished." Relief flickered across their faces. "Because you'll carry that weight far longer than any sentence I could give." Lucien stood beside her, silent but steady. Roran bowed his head. "I forgive you," Evelyn said. "But forgiveness is not forgetfulness." She turned, her cloak catching the wind. "Serve the realm, protect the weak, speak truth. That is your redemption." The pack knelt. Later, as twilight bled across the sky, Evelyn stood on the palace balcony overlooking the kingdom. Fires glowed across the distant hills. The wind carried the howls of wolves far and wide, not in mourning, but in unison. Lucien joined her, offering a cup of warmed mead. "You didn't have to face them alone," he said. "I wasn't alone," she replied, accepting the cup. He watched her for a moment. "You've done more in 3 days than most do in a decade." She gave a faint smile. "Power doesn't change people. It reveals them. And what has it revealed about you?" "That I was never weak," she said. "Just unseen." Lucien took her hand. "You're more than Luna now," he said. She looked out over the land. "Their land." "No," she whispered. "I'm exactly what the moon always meant me to be." That night, Evelyn walked through the city without guards, without ceremony. Villagers bowed. Some touched her sleeve. Children whispered behind windows. She stopped in front of the healer's hut, the place that had once been her home. The door creaked open. The old woman inside gasped, eyes wide. Evelyn smiled gently. "Do you still have those wildflower salves?" The healer nodded, stunned. "I need 3 jars," Evelyn said. "There are still wounded at the border." The healer fumbled to gather them, hands shaking. You're still helping." "I never stopped," Evelyn said. "They just stopped looking." She walked back toward the palace with the jars in hand, moonlight guiding her steps. Not as a queen hidden behind walls, but as the true Luna, a leader forged not by legacy but by trial. The fire crackled softly inside the healer's hut, casting flickering shadows along the curved wooden walls. Evelyn sat across from Mora, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of wolf mint tea. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was ancient, measured. Mora studied her with eyes that had seen generations rise and fall. "You've stepped into your place," the old woman said, "but the path doesn't end here." Evelyn nodded. "I know. The moon doesn't grant marks to ease a life. She grants them to prepare the soul." Outside, rain tapped gently on the roof. A summer storm had swept in, brief and warm, washing the kingdom clean. Evelyn leaned forward. "Why me, Mora? All this time, why would the moon choose someone like me?" Mora didn't smile. "Because you carry what others fear. Fire, truth, vision." Evelyn looked down into her cup. "Then why does it still feel so heavy?" "Because the most dangerous wolves are not the ones who lead armies," Mora said. "They're the ones who remember what it felt like to kneel." Evelyn's breath caught. "The weight is part of the gift," Mora continued, "and so is the price." She reached behind her and drew out a scroll, old, cracked at the edges. She unrolled it carefully between them. Evelyn recognized the symbols. "The prophecy of the Moonsworn," Mora said, "written before the first kings, passed only to those who bear both blood and mark." Evelyn traced the symbols with her eyes. She couldn't read them, not fully, but they felt familiar, like whispers from a dream. Mora pointed to the central line. "When the mark is mirrored and fire answers fire, the two shall restore the balance," she recited. Evelyn frowned. "Balance? The realm is fractured, Evelyn. Hidden wars beneath treaties, wolves forgetting their origins, magic fading. But the prophecy speaks of a Luna who returns light to the old ways." "I'm no savior," Evelyn said quietly. "You're not meant to be," Mora replied. "You're meant to be a catalyst." Evelyn leaned back, heart pounding. "I saw visions during the ritual," she admitted, "of wolves beyond the mountains, a crown of flame, shadows falling." Mora nodded slowly. "The visions are waking now. The moon is revealing more. Is this why the rogues attacked? Why they called me Queen's Blood?" Mora's expression darkened. "They serve a different force. One that fears what you are becoming." Evelyn set down her cup. "Then they'll come again." "Yes," Mora said, "and when they do, you must not only fight, you must lead." Thunder rumbled in the distance. Evelyn stood and walked to the door, pushing it open. The rain had slowed to a mist, soft and silver over the grass. In the distance, wolves patrolled the palace grounds. The people slept, unaware of what stirred beneath their peace. Lucian waited inside those walls. She turned back to Mora. "Does he know?" "Not yet," the healer said, "but he will. His path is bound to yours, as protector, as king, as mate. But the vision, it begins with you." Evelyn nodded once, the truth settling like armor across her shoulders. She would return to the palace tonight. Not just as Luna, but as the first echo of something far older, far greater, and far more dangerous than anyone had yet realized. The night air was sharp with anticipation. Wolves lined the sacred hilltop, forming wide concentric circles around the moonstone pillar. The stars overhead glittered like shards of frost, and the full moon rose slow and golden, casting a reverent light across the gathering. Evelyn stood at the summit. She wore a dark ceremonial cloak, the same one passed down from Lunas, who had stood before her, but it was her presence, not the garment, that commanded the crowd. Her mark gleamed at her collarbone, pulsing in rhythm with the bond she shared with Lucienne, who now stepped forward to stand beside her. No guards, no weapons, just the two of them, open to the eyes of every pack. Lucienne raised his voice. "Tonight we stand not as rulers above, but as wolves beside." A ripple of murmurs, respectful and hushed, moved through the gathering. "Too long have we relied on fear to hold borders. Too long have we allowed wounds to fester behind treaties. That ends now." He stepped back, and Evelyn moved to the edge of the stone platform. Her voice was quieter, but no less powerful. "I was rejected, shamed, cast out," she began, "and yet the moon did not forget me. Nor will I forget those who are still unseen." She swept her gaze across the crowd, eyes meeting faces from every pack, every rank. You do not need bloodlines to be worthy. You do not need titles to lead. The moon sees strength in truth, and that truth is rising. A young she-wolf near the edge began to cry softly. Others bowed their heads. The moment swelled, heavy with meaning. Lucien turned toward Evelyn and extended his hand. "Luna of the moon's flame," he said, voice low but clear, "will you lead this realm not by fear, but by fire?" Evelyn took his hand. "I already am." The bond between them glowed bright, not with possession, but with power. The kind forged through survival, chosen with clarity, sealed by something far older than tradition. Then Evelyn lifted her face to the sky and howled. It was not the song of grief, nor of longing. It was the song of arrival. Lucien joined her, his deeper timbre harmonizing with hers, and one by one, wolves across the hillside raised their voices to meet them. A sea of howls rose into the night, not as chaos but as a single unified cry, not as submission but as vow. The future was not the throne behind them. It was the fire they lit in those who watched. As the sound echoed into the mountains, Evelyn's eyes shone with something fierce and infinite. She turned to Lucien. "This is just the beginning." He nodded. "We walk it together." And so, beneath the full light of the moon, they stood, not as broken pieces of fate, but as the bond that redefined it. Together, they led a realm reborn, and the wild howled on. If Evelyn's journey has left you breathless, if her fire sparked something inside you, don't let this be the end. Subscribe now and follow her next chapter, where power meets prophecy, and destiny dares to ask what comes after the crown.